Hello, this is Daughter of Christ with another real life story. This time it's from a lady from Egypt, which I've translated and linked in the description, which the lady tells in her own voice. She says,
من وأنا صغيرة هي زرعت فيا تماما حبي للقرآن والإسلام.
From childhood, my mom planted in me a love for Islam and the Quran. Since I was 3 years old, adults treated me as somewhat of a child prodigy because they sensed my intelligence was way ahead of my peers. I used to question my mom on everything she tells me. I always wanted to know the reason behind things and how things work, and so we were constantly clashing, myself and my mom. I used to overthink and double-check everything, which was my personality, which became a problem for everyone. This started as young as primary school. My mom was a teacher, and I was a student in the same school. She had Christian colleagues at the school, and she used to fight with them constantly. She used to persecute them, and she used to write complaints against them with false accusations. I saw her cause so much trouble for them. I asked myself why they did not retaliate against me, since I was a student in their classes too. They did not persecute me or cause any trouble for me or try to do to me what my mum did to them, and I felt bad for them. I would return home and find my mum busy drafting complaints against them. I said, "Mum, why do you do all that to them?" She'd say, "I'm doing this because they're the enemies of Allah." I said, "Then why not let Allah himself punish them?" She said, "We must fight them. We were ordered to torture them in this life, and Allah will torture them in the next life." I said, "But if we torture them in this life, then their punishment has already happened. Why then do they get punished again afterwards?" I used to always argue with my mom. My mom used to tell me that I'm a troublesome, contrary person, always objecting to things, and that it isn't a good thing. But the truth is, I just wanted to understand why, and I wanted things to make sense, and it frustrated me that they did not. I was sent to the mosque to learn the Quran, which I did very quickly. The sheikh said once that pictures are haram. So I asked him, if pictures are haram, then why do you put up posters in the children's section with pictures on them? The sheikh got very angry and threw me out. That was the first time of many times that I got thrown out the mosque. Another day I was asked by a man why my fingernails were not kept short. He said, "Don't you know that the devil lives under those fingernails? You need to keep them short." I said, "Well, in that case, I should keep them long so I can capture the devil to kill him when he arrives to live there." The man was shocked and he left, and people around overheard this and laughed. My mum always felt ashamed of me because of my reputation of being a rude, argumentative child. When I was in year 3 of the intermediate school, I asked a Christian friend to skip classes together and go visit her church. I wanted to know what the deal is with Christians. What's their story? I visited it a few times until church leaders there felt uncomfortable seeing a hijabi girl attend, so I stopped going. I really liked the serenity and psychological peace I sensed there, which we Muslims never had in the mosque, or anywhere else actually. My mum used to go to a dentist and his window overlooked a church with an open door. I used to go with her and look out of that window to watch and listen, and I focused so hard. I asked Mum, why don't we sing like them? I moved on to secondary school, and by then I had read all the books that were available to me. I examined a book on the scientific miracles in the Quran, and I analyzed it scientifically, and found it all illogical and impossible to prove. In fact, it was all empty and lacking any method, and extremely weak. I felt that they wrote it to fool people. I was of secondary school age at the time, but it was very clear to me. We were taught that there was a logical succession of Allah's message from the Torah to the Gospel to the Quran. So I went and asked my mum for the Torah and the Gospel. She said, "No, we're not allowed to read previous scripture." I said, "But if Allah gave his revelation in a progressive succession, it's impossible to see that succession without examining it from start to finish. That's the definition of a succession. It makes no sense to call it the final message without knowing the previous one. It's final to what?" Mum said no, because the previous scriptures were corrupted. I said, "So why didn't Allah provide Muhammad with the correct originals of the Torah and the Gospel alongside the Quran? That way we would have the entire message available and nothing would be missing or lost." Any member of the scientific community knows this, that if someone claims a certain book is corrupted, they must provide the original to prove said corruption by comparing the fake to the original uncorrupted document. Otherwise the claim is unprovable. We really needed the previous revelation to be preserved in order to show that the Quran is a completion of it. Otherwise, it's a completion of what? It seems strange to me that Allah didn't consider that and step in to preserve them, even though He claims He is capable of preserving things like the Quran. I was not trying to be difficult, I only tried to prove the statement in a logical manner. My mum was silent for a long time, unable to answer me, which is something I was used to by then. Shortly afterwards, people's patience at the mosque had run out. A lady teacher there shouted at me and said, "You're always arguing and answering back with your questions. You're always objecting. Get out. I was thrown out in full view of a large congregation, but it was the last time. I did not go back to the mosque after that. I finished my schooling and went into obtaining master's and then doctorate degrees in neuroscience. My Muslim friends and colleagues used to say to me, "We are sure that one day the Christians will pull you to them and you will become a Christian." That comment always surprised me. I said, no one can pull me towards anything. I examine everything and compulsively double-check everything. It's impossible for me to accept something at face value. But I used to find myself hanging around Christians, but only because they were peaceful and kind, and would not backbite or engage in malicious gossip. I liked that about them, since I am quiet by nature, and I found peace among them. I asked one of my Christian friends for the New Testament, and she gave it to me. I read it at home in full sight of my mother, who attacked me for it. She said, "Now you're reading that careful book too?" I read it, but honestly, I did not understand a lot of it. But I found it noble, and it pulled on something in my heart. I did not want to keep it, to reread it and examine it, to avoid more clashes at home, so I returned it. I went to Umrah and Hajj. I did not find any spirituality there. I saw people shoving each other and shouting insults, and I wondered why God does not punish them for acting so shamefully in His holy place. Until I found myself shoving and shouting insults too, when a man tried pressing himself against me. I missed the peace that I had seen with my Christian friends, and I definitely did not find it there. I finished my doctorate degree, and I went to work in a country in the Gulf as a doctor in neuroscience. I started the religious search again, using my scientific logical mind. I found Islam to be a vast religion, in terms of its sources, and difficult to define. It was like a vast ocean, but it's salty water. It does not quench the thirst. The more you drink, the more thirsty you get. I found my long search did not achieve anything or reach any destination. It was mainly, if you're not with us, you're against us. I did not find any sign or proof of God's presence in it. My prayers were unanswered, and there was no mental or spiritual fulfillment of any kind in Islam. I looked at the stories of the Buraq and Muhammad's bed, which was still warm when he returned to it, the many wives of Muhammad. But the thing that interested me most were the symptoms Muhammad had when he had revelations. The foaming at the mouth, the shaking, the sweating, and obvious distress. They all matched symptoms of temporal lobe epilepsy, which I knew about due to my specialty in neuroscience. I thought, if those were the symptoms of revelation, then all other prophets should also have had the same symptoms when they received revelation. But there was no evidence of that whatsoever. I concluded that Muhammad had auditory and visual hallucinations, which were symptoms of a type of epilepsy and not of revelation. I reached a point where Islam ended for me. I watched Brother Rashid's program for a year and a half and really liked his clear, logical dissection of specific topics, and that he provided evidence, which I double-checked later anyway, at length, as I usually do. I started crying out to God, asking for help, to show me a sign or something. I woke up one day with a severe headache, an unbearable constant headache, and red, bloodshot eyes. The second day, the same. So was the day after that and after that. I was completely healthy before that day and had no blood pressure issues. And because of my background in neuroscience, I suspected it may be due to a dilated blood vessel in the brain, and I went to many doctors who gave me a very strong painkiller, just so I can function. I lived in fear of a hemorrhagic stroke, which can happen as a consequence of this. I felt the need to pray. But how do I pray now, since I no longer believe in Islam? I thought, okay, logically speaking, it's the Christians that have both the Torah and the Gospel in their book, whereas the Jews only have part of it. So Christians are following that progressive succession that I was told about, by keeping all the heavenly revelation in their book. So let me pray how they do. I downloaded some prayers, liturgies containing the Lord's Prayer, some psalms, and excerpts from the Gospel. I started reading it one evening, and I felt great relief and peace inside. I read them twice a day, mainly the Psalms of David. I'd read it before bed, or listen to an audio of it. One day, it filled me and stirred me inside.
وبديت ادعي ربنا انه يهديني. كان من الحاجات اللي كنت بشوفها ان لازم ربنا يظهر لي وده ما حصليش.
So I called out to God and begged him to guide me. I heard from others that they saw the Lord, but that didn't happen to me. I fell asleep and I woke the next day and the headache was gone. So I said, oh, today there's no headache. I looked and I saw my eyes were clear, no longer bloodshot. The next day, again, no headache. On the third day, I woke up again, no headache. Is it possible that God healed me? The middle of the third day, the headache returned, and I had the last capsule of painkiller left, as I was meant to restock at the time. So I said, God, if you're the real God, heal me so that my illness is finished with this last capsule, so I would never need to restock medicine again. And I took it. And I have not had a headache since. I was happy. Finally, I'm on the right track. I started facing a lot of opposition at work, people ganging up against me with false accusations, and people colluding to have me removed from my job. I saw them walk into the manager's office. I prayed and made the sign of the cross outside the door before I went in, and an unusual confidence and peace fell on me, and a strange confusion fell on the group that hated me, so much so that they were contradicting themselves in the same breath and fumbling their words. When it was my turn to speak, God gave me a clear, confident speech, and He gave evidence and proofs for me to answer in the moment, which I hadn't prepared before, and I couldn't explain how they came to me. I felt myself so calm and powerful. The manager looked on in shock, and the group said they needed to end the meeting, that they need more time to prepare, and asked to meet again the next day. I sent them all messages that I pray for my enemies, and I wish they could experience the peace and confidence I have in my God, that I don't hate now, but I love. I had the verse to love your enemies on my WhatsApp profile, which they could all see. I turned up the next day for the meeting, and I prayed and did the sign of the cross at the door again. I went in. The manager said there's no need for the meeting. No one has anything else to say, and I saw them all sat with their heads down, trying not to meet my eye. Shortly afterwards, the whole team was removed by higher management, but I kept my job. I watched quietly as God handled everything in my life, and I no longer worry about anything now. It makes little difference to me if my handbag has little money or a lot of money. My provision comes to me from God effortlessly. I no longer worry or fret like I did before. I've seen His power and now depend on Him like a little girl depends on her dad. All I focus on now is praying and enjoying it, and I live a life full of peace and serenity. There's nothing better than living with God. All of life's pressures that used to stress me before are now finished, and my life has changed completely, and God is on my side. I have a great Father who is responsible for my life with all its details. And that is the end of the story. We thank the Lord for bringing His sheep to Himself and for saving our dear sister from Egypt.